Imagine this. The year is 30 BC. The once glittering city of Alexandria, the jewel of the Nile, has fallen. Roman legions, led by the ambitious Octavian, patrol its streets, and within the cold stone walls of her own mausoleum, a queen is now a prisoner. This isn't just any queen. This is Cleopatra VII, the last pharaoh of Egypt, a woman of immense intelligence, charm, and power, now facing her darkest hour. Her lover, Mark Antony, is dead, and her kingdom is crumbling. But if you think this is where her story ends, you've underestimated the Queen of the Nile. This is the story of her final, brilliant, and defiant act. Trapped in her opulent tomb, surrounded by her treasures, Cleopatra was a caged lioness. Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus, knew her value. Parading her through the streets of Rome in chains would be his ultimate triumph, a living symbol of his victory over the East. So, he began a cruel game of manipulation. He sent messengers, whispering promises of mercy. "You will be safe," they said. "Your children will be cared for." He assured her she would be treated with all the dignity befitting a queen. But Cleopatra, a master of politics and power herself, saw through the charade. She knew these were just pretty words, a silken trap designed to keep her alive and compliant until he could display her like a trophy. She wasn't born to be a spectacle. While Octavian schemed, Cleopatra was playing her own game, a far more desperate one. Her primary concern was no longer her own life, but the future of her children. She had 4, Caesarion, her son, with Julius Caesar, and 3 children with Mark Antony, Alexander Helios, Cleopatra Selene, and Ptolemy Philadelphus. She knew Caesarion, as Caesar's biological son, was a direct threat to Octavian's legitimacy and was almost certainly doomed. But for her other children, there might be a sliver of hope. She entered into secret, frantic negotiations through her loyal servants. She pleaded, she bargained, she tried to secure a future for them, perhaps to have them sent far away, to be raised in obscurity but in safety. Every promise from Octavian was a double-edged sword, and every moment was a calculated risk. She was fighting not for a kingdom anymore, but for her legacy, a legacy of blood and love. Finally, the moment of confrontation arrived. Octavian, in a display of calculated magnanimity, visited Cleopatra in her mausoleum. Picture the scene: the cold, ambitious Roman general face to face with the charismatic, cornered queen. He probably expected tears, begging, a broken woman. Instead, he met a woman who, even in defeat, radiated an unshakable royal authority. Accounts say she was dressed in mourning, but had lost none of her famous charm. She presented him with a list of all her treasures, a seeming act of submission. But one of her own servants then accused her of hiding some away. She flew at the man, pulling his hair, her fiery spirit erupting. She then turned to Octavian, explaining she'd kept a few things not for herself, but as gifts for his wife and sister, to perhaps win their favor. It was a masterful performance, designed to make him believe she was clinging to life, that his plan to humiliate her was working. He left confident that he had her right where he wanted her. He had no idea he had just sealed her fate on her own terms. After Octavian's visit, a heavy silence fell. Cleopatra understood the truth with chilling clarity. There would be no mercy. There would be no dignified retirement. Her fate was to be a prisoner, a public spectacle in a Roman triumph. The ultimate degradation for a woman who saw herself as a living goddess. The thought was unbearable. She had lived as a queen, and she would die as one. Humiliation was a fate worse than death. The choice was made. She would not give Octavian his victory. She would rob him of his prize and script the final act of her own incredible life story. She began her preparations, not for a journey to Rome, but for a journey into eternity. With her decision made, Cleopatra orchestrated her final, legendary plan. She ordered a grand feast to be brought to her, bathed, and put on her finest royal robes. She was preparing for her wedding to the afterlife. Then came the most famous element of her story, the asp. The Egyptian cobra was not just a venomous snake. It was a sacred symbol, an agent of the gods. The bite of an asp was believed to grant immortality, deifying its victim. It was a royal death, a divine exit. Legend says the snake or snakes was smuggled into her mausoleum in a basket of figs, or perhaps a water jug. It was a simple, ingenious plan, bypassing the Roman guards who thought they had her secure. It was a perfectly Egyptian end for the last Egyptian pharaoh. As the sun began to set over Alexandria, Cleopatra took the snake. She was attended by her two most loyal handmaidens, Iris and Charmian. She likely wrote a final note to Octavian, a message that would inform him of her decision and, more importantly, deny him his triumph. Then, she is said to have placed the asp on her body. Some say to her breast, others to her arm. The venom would have been swift. As she lay dying, one of her handmaidens, Iris, collapsed at her feet. When Octavian's guards, alerted by her final message, burst into the room, they found a scene of mythic tragedy. Cleopatra was dead on her golden couch, dressed as a queen. Her other handmaiden, Charmian, was weakly adjusting the diadem on her queen's head. "Was this well done, Charmian?" one of the guards asked. "It was very well done," she replied, "and befitting the descendant of so many kings." And then she too fell dead. Octavian was furious. He had been outmaneuvered by a woman he thought he had broken. He couldn't parade her through Rome, so he did the next best thing. He paraded an effigy of her, with the asp clinging to her arm, ensuring the story of her suicide would be known throughout the empire. He had her buried with full honors, laid to rest beside her beloved Mark Antony, as she had wished. He had won the war, but she had won the final battle. By choosing the time and manner of her own death, Cleopatra transformed an act of desperation into an act of ultimate defiance. She secured her legend, becoming not a captive in a Roman parade, but an icon of power, passion, and indomitable will. Her story, sealed with a serpent's kiss, has echoed through history for over 2,000 years, a timeless testament to a queen who refused to be conquered. Thank you so much for watching. Cleopatra's story is one of endless fascination. What part of her life do you find most compelling? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey into the past, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from history. We'll see you next time.